right? Just confirm me. It's deleted from everyone's syllabus.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's deleted, right? But I'll tell you what things we have studied where and how can we relate that knowledge to this chapter and what things you need to keep in mind for your entrances, if not for your boards. And if you find anything, if you get any doubt from any previous chapter while we are discussing this, please feel free to bring it up and we can discuss that. So this is a chapter which talks about our issues in the environment, and because the other 3 chapters in this unit, we studied about ecosystem, we studied about organisms and population, and we studied about biodiversity and how to mitigate the loss of biodiversity that we are facing. So at the end, it was about environmental issues. As you can see, it talks about air pollution. You can see my cursor, everyone. Is my cursor visible to all
Yes,
of
sir.
you? Yeah. So you can see that it talks about air pollution and its control, water pollution and its control, solid waste. So how to manage wastes we have. So don't think that everything from this chapter, nothing is relevant. Because remember, in biotechnology chapter, we already studied about sewage treatment plants, right? We use biotechnology to treat the sewage before throwing it into the rivers, right? If you do not do that, then that becomes a solid waste in the water, and then it causes some problem. But what I want you to focus on and keep in mind is, just 1 second, I need to move it somewhere else. Yeah. Is these parts, the radioactive waste, the greenhouse effect and global warming, and ozone. Okay, this is something which can also be asked just as a general aptitude. So some entrances have some common general science questions as well, or a special segment dedicated to it. Not only the medical entrances, but if you are planning to give any other entrance in the field of science to continue in biology, you might find these topics important and worth keeping in your mind. So about pollution, you already know it is just the basic thing. What is pollution? It is any undesirable change in physical, chemical, biological characteristics of air, land, water, or soil. Okay, and the things that cause pollution are called pollutants. Okay, don't worry about these things. It's not important. So it can be air pollution, water pollution. It can also be soil pollution, like plastics in the soil, chemical pollution, etc. For air pollution, you don't have to read a lot of things, but you should know the concept of an electrostatic precipitator. Sorry. Okay. Is it visible to all of you? Sorry. People, is it visible? Like the page and my cursor?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Okay. So the concept of electrostatic precipitator is, so it also helps us. This concept is also used in air purifiers. So you know air purifiers, right? We use air purifiers, and during winters when there is lots of pollution with smog, air purifiers are generally suggested or encouraged. So dirty airs enter from one side, and basically the particulate matter has to be settled down, precipitated down, and that is done on the basis of electrostatic force. Now, about electrostatic things, you know what is static electricity, right? During the winters, you might have felt a minor static electric current from woolen clothes, or while putting on or taking off a sweater or a woolen cloth, you will find some crackling sounds. Any one of you have experienced this? Woolen clothes crackling?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What is that? You know that? What's that? Or you touch someone who's wearing something woolen and your hands are cold, or you just rubbed your hands to make it warm. Then you touch something and you get a very minute shock from a person or from a person's clothes or from something that you touch, a metal object or something. During winter especially, you can experience that. That is where the static current, or a better example is, all of you must have seen this attraction due to static charge. So we rub a plastic scale on our hairs, and these small bits of paper gets attracted to that plastic scale. Correct?
Yes, sir.
That though we all have done, right? Yeah. So you know how it works, what's happening there? What's happening there? So by rubbing a glass or a plastic to a hair, now that there are conditions, that hair should not be oiled, that hair should not be wet, it should be a dry hair. So when you are rubbing, one surface loses electrons, the other surface gains it, and there is a static current or a charge that accumulates, and that leads to its attraction. That leads to the attraction of the particles. So here the dirty air gets attracted to this negatively charged wires and gets deposited on these wires. And when it deposits, it forms a discharge corona. Now, this corona has nothing to do with the coronavirus, but both the terms are kind of the term comes from the same meaning. So corona is associated with the surface of the sun, if I am already told you, right? The way a sun surface look like, we call it corona, this kind of thing. And a COVID virus also looks like this, a spherical virus with spike proteins at the surface. And when these particles, get deposited on a negatively charged wire, they get deposited in a manner where they give an appearance like of a corona, like a coronary appearance, like this. Okay. And this is how this dirty air, all the dust particles are collected, and the clean air comes out. Not 100% clean, but air which has very less particles, or almost particles below the health hazard thing. So with this and this is electrostatically charged. So this is called electrostatic precipitator. And this collection plate is grounded because ground is the source of all. You can dump electricity into the ground as much as you want. Okay. So just know that through electrostatic, and it's written here that, so basically what happens is electrode wires are maintained at several like higher voltages, which produce a corona that releases electrons. So from this negatively charged wire, you get electrons which then sit on these dust particles. Now the dust particles get charged, just like your scale was getting charged, and then they get attached, or they get collected on the wires. All you have to know is that this kind of precipitators are very important to remove gases like sulfur, which are harmful gases, or even dangerous particulate matters that are very, very small. And sometimes even smaller particles are there which cannot be removed by these precipitators, but these are very, very beneficial. Okay, so just know and read this paragraph for your knowledge, that at what places it can serve as a benefit. Okay, everyone. But more important than this in this chapter is this part: effect of sewage discharge on some important characters of water, a fresh water source, for example a river or a lake. Now this I have already taught you. You know the relationship between dissolved oxygen and BOD? I would like someone to comment on it. We studied about dissolved oxygen and BOD when we were studying applications of biotechnology in sewage treatment. Remember, people?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so What was the relationship between dissolved oxygen? What is dissolved oxygen, first of all? Sumaira, how about you? Are you there? Yeah. Am I audible to you, Sumaira?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What was dissolved oxygen? Remember?
The amount of oxygen present
In a water, and yes, right, in any given water. And what is BOD?
that is a biochemical oxygen demand.
Yeah, it's a biochemical oxygen demand. Correct. And again, revising some concepts of biotechnology. Okay, so Minashi, what will happen to the BOD of a water which is polluted? So if you compare a BOD of a polluted water and a fresh water, where will you find more dissolved oxygen? A fresh water or a polluted water?
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, so if you compare a fresh water with the polluted water, fresh water source, which is clean, and a polluted water source, let's say, which has some contamination of sewage, right? So where will you find high levels of dissolved oxygen?
Fresh water.
Fresh water, right? And where will be, so depending on that dissolved oxygen, which type of water will have a higher biochemical oxygen demand?
The sewage water. I mean, the polluted water.
Polluted water. Okay, so demand is more when the supply is less, right? It's simple rule. So wherever the oxygen is less, so this graph tells you how to read this graph. Can anyone read this whole thing and tell me what does this talks about, this whole schematic? Like if I do this, you will understand, but if someone would like to just volunteer and do this, it will add to your learning more. What is this schematic telling you? No one? Well, okay, so there are two parts of it. This schematic here talks about, so this point is where the sewage is discharged into a river or a clean water. Okay, and we are assuming that this sewage is not treated. That's where the importance of using biotechnology to set up these sewage treatment plants and clean the sewage before discarding it into the river comes in, and it matters. So if it is not cleaned and if it is discharged, this blackness is just saying talking about the pollution level in that water. Fish kill and disappearance of clean water organisms. So fish dies and clean water organisms also dies and they disappear from a very, very polluted water. But after some time, it's not like it stays polluted forever. If you have just dumped something once, nature has this ability to clean and heal itself back, because it has, as I told you, it has a lot of decomposers, right? Which decompose any kind of organic waste or organic debris present in the environment, correct? Remember? We were using the same concept and we were introducing aerobic bacteria. Remember? In the bioreactors, big chambers. People, sewage treatment, chapter 12, I think. Applications of biotechnology. Do you remember this part? We introduced aerobic bacteria, which will, and through aeration, will provide oxygen, more oxygen, right? So all these debris will be degraded by the bacteria. In nature, it happens on its own, but it happens much slower, on a very, very slow pace. So currently the problem is not that we are not the nature is not able to clean itself. The problem is we are polluting the environment at a much higher rate as compared to the rate at which environment can clean itself. Okay, do you understand? Everyone, make sense? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for example, increase of CO2 gas in environment. That's not a problem. Problem is, so CO2 is fixed by plants. We all know plants are CO2 fixers. So they take CO2, they take water, and they reduce the CO2 to make it starch. So what's the problem? If there is more CO2 in atmosphere, plants should make more food, but that is not how it works. Plants have a cycle, a rate at which they can do photosynthesis, and a rate at which they can produce fruits and fix the CO2 into starch. We are adding CO2 at a very higher pace than the plants can mitigate. That's where it is causing rapid or accelerated global warming and is acting as a greenhouse gas. Okay. Similarly, in nature, it will get cleaned over time. So here there is no biotechnology applied, but nature over time cleans the river, and then the graph is showing you that there will be reappearance of clean water organisms by the time you reach here. Okay. The same thing here is represented as a correlation of oxygen, dissolved oxygen versus BOD. So this is the point at which you introduce the sewage discharge. So before that, before this point, you will see that the dissolved oxygen level is shown in red and BOD is shown in blue. So the dissolved oxygen concentration was very high. And if the concentration or the availability was very high, then you will see that the demand will be very low. But the moment you introduce sewage, all of a sudden the water is so polluted that organisms can't survive. There is lots of organic waste, and dissolved oxygen will just go down. Okay. Because the organisms will use a lot of this dissolved oxygen. The bacteria which use up oxygen to degrade these things will use all the oxygen, and the oxygen level will drop down to a minimum. And because the oxygen level is minimum, the demand for oxygen, biochemical oxygen demand, will be the highest. After some time, these bacteria will degrade some bit of it, and over time you will see that dissolved oxygen will again start coming back and the demand will start declining. At a point where it will reach a sustainable amount of oxygen back in the water, you will see reappearance of clean water organisms and BOD going down. So more BOD means more polluted water. So this concept is related to your sewage treatment plant as well. That's why it's important to keep in mind. Is it clear? Any doubts here, people? Anything you want to ask? Yes, no? No. Okay, great. Now in this chapter, apart from this, what you need to read. Okay, so here you can read about biological oxygen demand, if you wish. Yeah, algal bloom, just keep it in mind. No need to remember the definition and all. So sometimes if there is, too less nutrient in water is also bad for the life, but sometimes if it is too much of nutrients, then the free floating algae, which are called planktons, so they grow a lot, and you must have seen many water bodies like this. Can you see the greenish layer deposits over the water bodies? Anyone has seen it in real? Any lake?
Yes, sir.
Or pond going all green? And you have to make sure that it is not a macroscopic big plant like a seaweed or something, or lotus or something. It has to be a layer, a algal layer. You have seen it, right? Safula has seen it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is because the water had lots of nutrients to begin with, but not many life forms, like big life forms like fish or an ecosystem was not established. So the only kind of life form which is present in the water, which is this algae, aquatic algae, they start blooming, and they bloom to such a high excessive amount that they take over the whole water body, and that's where the water body looks green, and that is called algal bloom. Okay, and they grow very, very fast, and they sometimes becomes problematic, okay, to manage, and destroys the ecosystem if there is any. Okay, so another thing which is connected to ecosystem, connected to the food chain. So food chain, trophic level, they are all in your syllabus. Okay, that's not been deleted. The only part which is deleted is this chapter 16, which has this one concept associated related to it called biomagnification. What is the term telling you? Bio means life. Magnification means? What does magnification means?
Increases.
Increases. Okay, here, yes, correct, Saifullah. Increases, here it is increase in concentration. So they will not ask you a direct question on biomagnification, but you should know that as we go up the trophic level, so at the very basic there is water, then there are zooplanktons. Remember phytoplanktons? So before that there are phytoplankton, zooplanktons. They come under the primary, the bottom, the primary producers and primary consumers, right? Category phytoplanktons. Here it's zooplankton.
Yes, sir.
So here it will be primary consumers. And do you also remember that the pyramid, biomass pyramid, is inverted in this aquatic system, right? A very low mass of zooplankton can hold a very high mass of small fish. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
The energy pyramid is still upright, but the biomass pyramid is inverted. Now, then from there you come to secondary consumers, and then you come to tertiary consumers. Okay, and in this case, there is a bird also, which is another quaternary consumer or the apex predator of this fish. So as you go higher in the trophic level, you will see that they have taken an example of DDT. So any toxic substance which is present in wastewater coming from industries, chemicals. So DDT is one such chemical which we are not able to metabolize, and if it accumulates in our body and cells, it creates toxicity. It is toxic, and for the same reason that it is toxic to living system in very early stages, it is used to prevent the growth, or what should I say, prevent the mosquito breeding. Okay, so it prevents mosquito breeding, and it is sprayed in fresh water or stagnant water sources. But zooplanktons, look at here. So in water where it is sprayed, what is the concentration? 0.003 ppb. ppb means parts per billion. Okay, and what is a billion? Billion is 10 raised to power 9. Okay, so 0.003 parts per billion is the concentration. very, very low. Okay. In zooplanktons, it is 0.04 parts per million. It's M here, not B. And million is 10 to the power 6. So you can see that suddenly, just going from water to the first trophic level, there is around 10,000 fold change in the concentration. 1,000 fold change all of a sudden. Even though this is a very, very small concentration to affect us, but still the fold is too much. Yes or no? Fold change is too much. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we go from zooplanktons to the small fish, it's another decimal point. So it 10 times increase, 10x, almost 10 times increase. Right? 0.04 to 0.5. And as we go one more layer up, these large fish has 2 ppm. Now 2 ppm is a significant, it will now start affecting life forms. And because zooplanktons live in water, one small fish feeds on many zooplanktons, one large fish feeds on many small fish. So over its lifetime, it accumulates a lot of DDT, and one predatory fish-eating bird will eat a lot of larger fish over its lifetime, and it will accumulate the DDT in its body up to 25 ppm concentration, which starts showing toxic effects. Okay, so this phenomena is well known for heavier metals. Apart from the question that can come is, which of the following shows biomagnification in living system? So mercury, DDT, and lead. Write it down. Mercury, DDT, and lead. Shows biomagnification. Okay. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So heavy metals, if they are present in the environment, can be accumulated over time, going from lower trophic levels to higher trophic levels. So that's the thing you should keep in mind. So it's not only nutrition, but also things. Okay, now eutrophication is another common concept. You will not be asked in boards. Eutrophication is the natural aging of a lake. Whenever any ecosystem dies, okay, it has more deaths. When ecosystem is dying, it has more deaths than births. And in a forest or in a land ecosystem, we often don't feel it or see the effects much, because everything goes into the soil, degrades. But though there is an effect, the soil in a dying ecosystem is enriched with nutrients a lot, because everything that will die will decompose and go into the soil as elemental nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Make sense? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But in a water ecosystem, it is more evident because there is water to hold the nutrients. So when a lake over time becomes old, so there is a new lake, let's say, and there can be artificial lakes also which people can form. So if it is a new lake, there will be new like species you introduce, there will be an ecosystem that will set up. But as the lake will go over years and decades, a lot of aging will happen. By aging, I mean organisms will die and settle at the bottom. There will be sedimentation of soil, rocks at the bottom. Within those rocks, there will be dead bodies. Over time, the nutrient enrichment of the lake will take place. Okay. And in a young lake, as they say, that the water will be cold does not make much of a sense. It can be cold in an older lake also, but it will be less, it will be clearer, less smudgy, because more things are mixed in it, it becomes more opaque. And a new lake supports less life. Sometimes you might have seen images or videos of different lakes in the world which have crystal clear water. Have you seen these videos or images?
Yes, sir.
Lakes and shallow oceans having crystal clear water.
Yes, sir.
So crystal clear water means one thing, that is the life, there's not too much life it can support. Simple, right? If anything is crystal clear, it's not nutritive unless and until it is a glucose solution. Yeah, correct? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, even for a glucose solution it has to be purified, otherwise glucose solution is also dusky, right? So yeah, so a lake as it ages, its fertility increases, it has more nitrogen, phosphorus, which can hold more aquatic organisms. Okay, so over the time the debris settle up in the lake, and that's called eutrophication of the lake. So when lake goes beyond, so it should not also age beyond a point. Sometimes these artificial lakes needs to be cleaned up, okay, because there is too much of debris that, again, it is faster, we are accumulating it faster than the lake can clean itself naturally. So that becomes a problem. So we are accelerating actually. So natural aging of a lake is very, very slow, but with human activities and pollution, we are making it more and more polluted in very less amount of time. Okay, now wastewater treatment we have studied, so no need to worry about this. And another thing that you should know is radioactive waste. So how many of you know what is radioactivity? You might have studied, have you studied atoms and nuclei in your physics as a chapter, or is it deleted? You must have studied radioactivity there. In biology also, we have studied the concept of radioactivity in genetics. Can anyone recall and tell me where have we studied radioactivity, where it is useful? Radioactive labeled probes, anything, people? I'm giving you a hint, genetics. How did we figure out that DNA is a genetic material?
Hershey and Chase experiment.
Perfect. What did they do? What did Hershey and Chase do? You're
They
right.
cultured
Uh-huh.
bacteriophages in sulfur and phosphorus, radioactive sulfur and phosphorus.
Perfect. And why did they do that?
If DNA is the genetic material, then when an bacteriophage infects a bacteria, the radioactive phosphorus that was present, that was taken up by the bacteriophage, will be passed on to the generations.
To the generations of what? Bacteria.
Bacteriophages.
No, not phages. You will, and also not generation. You will allow the bacteriophages to infect the bacteria. Then remember, you centrifuge to let the bacterial cells settle. So in the supernatant, you will be left with the virus coat, the bacteriophage coat protein. And what will go inside the cell will be the genome of the virus, right? That was the whole idea. Remember, Cephala? Because we know that when a virus infects anything, it just sends its genetic material to replicate itself, right? Not the protein code.
Yes,
Makes
sir.
sense? Yeah. So after centrifugation, if we see the radioactive signal coming from the sediment, what does it mean? If the phosphorus signal is coming from the sediment, so this is the cells that are sedimented at the bottom, and if we see the signal coming from this sediment, what does it mean? It means that phosphorus containing molecule is the genetic material, and phosphorus containing is DNA, sulfur containing is protein. So in their experiment, they got the sulfur radioactivity signal from the supernatant and phosphorus radioactivity signal from the sedimented bacterial cells. Nothing about next generation. Is it clear? I hope you're not confused, right, Saifullah and others?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great that you attempted. Very good. But is it crystal clear in your head now?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So that's where we studied about radioactivity. But anything you would like to tell me more about radioactivity that you have studied in your physics or chemistry classes? Is it a good thing? Like radioactive substances are good, bad, harmful? What are they? Radioactive
Harmful.
substances. Why are they harmful?
Like they cause mutation.
Exactly. And why do they cause mutation? We are going closer and closer to the physics, to the same chapter, atoms and nuclei. You have studied that or not? Like you know about what makes a substance radioactive? If no, then you can tell me.
I don't think so, sir.
No? So they have not. So is it not in your syllabus to know about fission, fusion, radioactivity, atom and
No.
nuclei? No? Okay,
Atom
good.
and nuclei are like
Is there, right?
very few topics are there. Most
Few
of them
topics
are deleted.
deleted. Okay. Anyways, so radioactivity comes from, as the word says, uh, radiation. Okay. Now it's nuclear energy. You know about nuclear energy, right? We harness the power that comes from the fission of nucleus. So nuclear fission, there are nuclear fission, so atomic bombs for that matter, that harness the power of nuclear fission. Nuclear fusion is also another concept which is more difficult to achieve, and it happens in the sun. So our sun has nuclear fusion going on, where two hydrogen fuses to become helium under crushing gravitational force. Fission, on the other hand, is breaking apart of the nucleus, and lots of energy is released out. But nuclear energy is a non-polluting way of generating energy, but it has some serious problems, that the waste that comes out is radioactive and it is high energy. It has so much of energy that comes out of this nuclear generation of energy. From this waste, this radiation has so much of energy that it can cause mutation. It can break bonds of molecules in your DNA, okay, and even proteins. So when these bonds are broken, the DNA is damaged and there are mutations. So nuclear radiation is lethal. Okay. At high doses, you just can get killed, like what happened during the nuclear bombs were thrown during the World War. So it was lethal. But at lower doses also, it causes long-term disorders and health-related issues. Okay, if you come in contact with this radioactive waste. So what is done is, this radioactive waste, you should know that how it is disposed. This is the important thing you should know. So this radioactive waste, after treatment, so it is treated and it is kept in containers for very, very long time. So the point is, if something is radioactive, it is very, very energetic. So you have studied a rule in chemistry. If something has high energy, what happens to its stability? If something has very high energy, then it will have, what will happen to its stability? Will it be high or low?
Low.
Low, right? So high energy means low stability. So if you first have to store this waste for very long time in leak proof chambers. It should not leak, okay, with caution. If it leaks, if this in the nuclear power plants, this radioactive waste leaks, it causes radioactivity in the atmosphere, and it starts causing these mutations and disorders in life forms around it. So this, you must have heard of Chernobyl disaster, right? In your textbooks, I think in history textbooks, the Chernobyl disaster that happened, that incident was a leakage in the disposal of radioactive waste. So after holding it, so this high energy they will start degrading on their own, and their stability will go down. After that, it should be shielded in the containers, and it should be buried within the rocks very deep, around 500-meter deep, which is like half a kilometer deep in the earth's surface. That's how it's kept away from affecting the life forms around, because it's so deep and it's buried, and earth is very big, so you can keep burying things inside. And it will also not affect the water, underground water, because it's even deeper a layer than that. Underground water we find at just some 100 feet or so. We don't have to go so deep, but for this you need to go deep and bury things. And this method of disposal is actually not very encouraged these days. So people are saying that there should be some cleaner ways to dispose the radioactive waste, but till now the most used way is this, and that's how we keep radioactive waste away. Okay, just know this. And another important topic that you should just know is the greenhouse effect and ozone depletion. So first of all, let's pay some attention to what is greenhouse effect. What is a greenhouse? Why is it called a greenhouse? Is it green in color? Why it's called greenhouse, people? Where has this concept come from? Anyone? Greenhouse effect. So in temperate regions or in cold countries, when something has to be grown, which so plants require, both plants and animals, they have an optimum range of temperatures in which their enzymes work the best, right? So their growths also are affected by temperature. Just I think last chapter we talked about factors affecting organisms. There we studied that temperature is one factor that defines life on planet Earth, because temperature gradient divides the planet into 3 specific regions: the tropical, temperate, and the tundra, right? And plants that grow in tropical don't do very good in temperate or tundra because of lower temperatures. So for example, tomato. If you want to grow tomato in tropical areas like India or other tropical regions, it works very well. But in temperate, like many European countries, many of these things don't grow very well, correct? So they have to find an alternative. So they need higher temperature, but these countries don't have higher temperature. So what they do, they make a greenhouse a house which is made up of glass. So technically it's a glass house. Okay. And the characteristic of this house is that it can allow the sunlight to come inside. And in this house, so it's a house on soil, on ground, in farms. So you have these tomato crops, okay, let's say, growing. So what happens, sunlight can come in, but the amount of light and heat that comes in cannot escape. So from one side, it just cannot go out. So over time, what will happen? Heat can come in, but it gets trapped by this special layer, the coating on the glass, because of which outside, whatever the temperature is, let's say if it is 10 degrees outside, which is quite cold, inside you can maintain the temperature higher, even at 20, 25 degrees, which is optimum for growing these crops. So that's a greenhouse effect. Okay. So a small glass house growing plants, especially during winters. Okay. So it allows the light to come in, but does not allow the heat to escape. Make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now, how is it related to global warming and Earth? Is because there are many gases. So this is where, look at this schematic. So what have they shown here? What do you see here? This is the planet Earth, right? And there are greenhouse gases that make like a blanket in the atmosphere. So these greenhouse gases are, most major greenhouse gases, your methane. Oh, you can write down methane. Oh, I'm struggling with this pen thing a lot. Then CO2 and CFCs. This is called chlorofluorocarbons. These are the major three. Yeah, I think it's also given somewhere. Yes, here also, only down. So you see 60% is CO2, which act as greenhouse gas. 20% greenhouse gas is methane, and CFC is 14%. So if you see, just CO2, methane, and CFC make around 94% of the greenhouse gas. Correct? So these greenhouse gas, when sunlight comes, it's very important that Earth, to maintain a mean temperature, it is very important for Earth to retain some heat. It is also very important for Earth to reflect some heat back into the space so that Earth does not get overheated by the sun. So when light comes and falls, you know, our north and south pole has these ice glaciers, white regions, large, huge, humongous regions of Earth is white with glaciers. It is because it reflects light very well, okay, like a mirror, and keeps the temperature regulated. But these greenhouse gases work opposite. So the light which is reflected by the surface of the Earth and should go out of the atmosphere now cannot go and gets trapped by this blanket of greenhouse gas. Okay, so these gases can absorb heat and not let it go out into the space. So basically what happens is heat gets trapped in this layer of lower atmosphere and affects everything which is on the surface. Life, the glaciers start melting, and it is a feedback mechanism. It is a positive feedback. So more greenhouse gas will trap more heat. More trapped heat will lead to melting of ice sheets. more melting will be resulting in lesser and lesser ice sheets, right? So two things are happening. One, the sunlight is not getting reflected properly because of less ice sheets, because that is the only white material that reflects a lot of sunlight coming on Earth. Second, the greenhouse is trapping the heat. So once this cycle starts, and if we start adding, so CO2 is the major greenhouse gas, as you can see, and humans are adding exactly the same in atmosphere at a very alarming rate. So if CO2 increases, greenhouse effect increases. If greenhouse effect increases, then your glaciers decreases. If glacier decreases, further heating up of the planet happens and more greenhouse effect is observed, and then more melting and more rise in the temperature, and it gets from here, it's a downhill slope. It gets worse and worse. So is this concept clear, how greenhouse effect causes a problem and accelerates the global warming? Everyone, this part is clear? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, so right from the beginning, when Earth was formed and life started on Earth, everything settled and evolved in place. So this is one part of the story related to this greenhouse effect and the radiation from sun. We know that sun is also a big source of ultraviolet radiation, correct? Everyone? UV radiation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And how many of you remember the radiation spectrum? Which kind of radiation? These are like electromagnetic radiation spectrum. Which radiation has the most energy? I'm sure you must have studied about the wavelength and energy spectrum in your physics, correct? Okay, is light a electromagnetic radiation or not? Yes, no? Some physics 101. Okay, so light is a electromagnetic radiation. I'm sure you have studied electricity and magnetism, correct, people? In your physics? Electricity causes magnetism. No. Fleming's left hand rule. Nothing. Is
Yes,
it all?
sir.
No, it should be in the syllabus, right? I can't believe it's all out of the syllabus.
It is in the syllabus, sir.
In the syllabus, right? So you know about electromagnetic radiations. A radiation which has both electric and magnetic component. By Fleming's left hand thumb rule, you can find which is the electricity vector and which is magnetic vector, right? The direction.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, please go and revise. Anyway, so light is electromagnetic radiation. It has a spectrum. With the visible spectrum of light is what we see. It starts from like violet and goes till red. It's called VIB-GYOR. Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. Red has the biggest wavelength and it has the least energy. Okay. 700 nanometer wavelength and least energy. It scatters a lot and it penetrates deep. That's why when the sun is the farthest, morning and evening seems reddish. The sun looks red because only the red light penetrates and comes all through that way and reaches your eye. Whereas blue has more energy, violet has more energy. So ultraviolet rays has even more energy. So if a ray has more energy, after ultraviolet, these X-rays, gamma rays, they are very high energy rich rays, and they have very small amplitude, okay, wavelength, sorry. So small wavelength and high energy. Ultraviolet also has small wavelength and high energy. And the problem with high energy is just like the problem that was with radiation. What was the radiation? Radioactive radiation. So here also, high energy waves can cause mutations, can break bonds in the skin, can cause harm to the DNA, can cause DNA damage. So UV comes out from the sun. Life on Earth is protected from that UV component by a gas known as ozone. You know about ozone, people? Anyone knows what is ozone? So ozone is O3, which has 2 lone electrons. Chemistry, you must have known, you must have studied about valence electrons, excess electrons, lone pair electrons, etc., right?
Yes, sir.
So O2 is stable and is oxygen that we inhale. It's present in the lower regions of the atmosphere called troposphere. But O3 is only present in stratosphere, the upper part of the atmosphere. And ozone protects us from UV radiation. Okay. And how it protects us from UV radiation? It takes all the energy from the UV rays and does not allow that UV ray to reach the surface of the earth, protecting us. It's like a blanket protecting us from UV radiation. But this blanket is being depleted from the CFCs, which is chlorofluorocarbons that we are emitting from the earth. Chlorofluorocarbon is also a greenhouse gas, as I just told you above. It constitutes for 14% of the greenhouse effect in the atmosphere. Okay, second to third after carbon dioxide and methane. And these chlorofluorocarbons are used in many of our appliances, like refrigerator, air coolers, like AC machine and all, air conditioners. So earlier, chlorofluorocarbon was used a lot, but now countries have realized that if we keep using chlorofluorocarbons, first we are adding CO2 by burning fossil fuels and all. Plus, we are also now adding chlorofluorocarbons, which on top of acting as a greenhouse gas is also depleting the ozone from like the inside of the planet. Okay, so this, what you see here, is the hole, the ozone hole. So this is the extent where the ozone is depleted. Okay, and if you see below, you are actually seeing Antarctica. So this is the South Pole, and this outline is of the Antarctica, the whole continent, the 7th continent, which does not have much of life. And you can see that this hole spans even bigger than this whole island, whole continent, almost of the size. And because of this, UV radiation can now reach the planet and cause a lot of harm to living systems. If we keep losing or keep thinning the UV radiation, keep thinning the ozone layer, the occurrences and the chances of UV radiation caused damage will increase in humans as well. And one of the long-term problem is skin cancer. Humans develop a lot of skin cancer if they live in the regions or work in the regions which like are ozone depleted. It is the North Pole and the South Pole. This they have shown South Pole. A similar hole is also at the North Pole. Okay. And why just North Pole and South Pole, I leave up to you, or we can discuss it some other day. Why just North Pole and South Pole has the hole? Why not the equator and all? Okay, there's a reason for it, but it is slightly convoluted and off topic. So I'm not talking about it for now. You don't have to go into the details of how CFC works, how it depletes the ozone, but just know that ozone protects us from UV, CFC depletes ozone, and hence UV rays actually is harmful. Okay. And that's there. This is what UV radiation can cause. So this paragraph, just keep noting. I hope you are noting, everyone, these paragraphs in your books. Are you marking it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Cool.
sir.
You don't have to read the full chapter. So just these things. And then I think, yeah, nothing more is important. Yeah. So these parts are important from this chapter. Again, don't worry about these parts for your boards, but just know these things because there are some important knowledge-based things you should know for your entrances. Okay. Anyone here is giving entrances apart from NEET? Because NEET, I'm sure all of you should and all of you will attempt if you are looking forward to pursue a career in biology and medicine. But anyone else who's planning to give any other entrance apart from NEET after your 12th school boards? No? How many of you are not planning to give NEET, like do not want to pursue a career? Because you can also talk to talk to me about your doubts if you want to pursue a career in biological sciences or biochemical sciences. So anyone who's not like not planning to give NEET and become a medical practitioner and has other plans can talk to me as well. It's like I prepare you for NEET entrances, that's there, but there are other options also that you should be open to if you are like planning a career there. Like and many of which I already taught you about, like biotechnology is one field you can go to, genetics is another field you can go to, of course, like assisted reproductive technologies, fundamental research, all these fields like are open. So you can plan accordingly your exams and entrances that you wish to give and what you wish to do. Okay. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to discuss today. If anyone has some doubt, we can take those doubts now. Otherwise, it's done from my side. So this chapter. So in the next class, I'll be doing the same for chapter 9, which is strategies of enhancement of crop production. And from that chapter also, some concepts are very important, which merges both genetics, plant genetics, and biotechnology. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. What is the best way to learn biology? So, like, honestly speaking, when I started studying biology, I struggled a lot. Today, I'm pursuing it as a career. So, from my very limited experience of spending around, now it's been around 13 years in biology, I can just say that the best way to learn biology is to reduce the learning load, reduce the memorizing load. Try to understand concepts as much as you can as stories, which you can keep in your head. So we don't have to learn stories. Just hear it over and over, discuss it over and over, and it stays in the head. Like all of you, I'm sure that none of you sat and remembered or by hearted the story of the rabbit and the tortoise, right? But every one of us know it because this is what happens, correct? And we know the moral. The moral is that even if you are faster, do not be lazy, otherwise you will lose. So that's the moral. You can build the story around it. Yes or no? Any one of you sat and learned by hearted the story? No, right? Do you sit with the lyrics and learn and by heart the songs or the poems that you really like? Yes, no? No, right? I think you just listen to it, make a concept map of it in the mind. So this, after this line, this should come, because the whole point of this song is to convey this thing. Similarly, the best way to learn biology is to know what is the point of this chapter. Why are you studying this chapter? What is the point of this concept? What is it trying to tell me? What is like global warming telling me? What is genetics? What did Mendel do? How is it relevant to me? How is genetic disorders relevant to me? Things like that. So if you keep making concept maps in your head, then it becomes easier. Not just biology, but any subject like physics, chemistry, mathematics, all works the same. Science, just focus on logics and discuss it more, write it more. Some people remember better when they write, but remember that it takes more time. So you cannot do it one night before the exam. You have to do it continuously every day. So the best way to learn biology is learn it every day. Tell it to other people, discuss it with people. Be more vocal in the class. None of you speaks. So that way, but the good thing about biology is passing in biology is very easy. You can literally just cram 50 question answers and you will pass. But becoming excellent in biology is equally difficult. You need to understand the inherent logic of life. Okay. Okay, one thing I'll suggest you, all of you, if you have some time, apart from your exams, do look for a documentary, which I really find very, very educational. It's on Netflix. Would you like to note the name? I'm just writing it here. I think you can find it on other sources in internet as well. I'm not sure, but it says Our Universe. It's not about the physics, not just about the physics. It talks about birth of star and all in very, very simple language. Our Universe. Oh, come on, man. Okay, people, I'm struggling with it. Please write Our Universe. That's the watch out for this documentary if you have time. It has 6 episodes, I think. It's very good. It connects life on Earth, like biology, with chemistry and physics, how the universe was formed, how the cosmos was formed, how the solar system was set up, and how everything that living beings do, from feeding to from foraging to reproducing to dying, everything is associated with energy.